Hello everyone and welcome to this latest episode of Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and Elvis. I just got back from work and he's just gotten up, but he's been out with a friend of mine and it's been pouring with rain, so I walked straight into the house and that wonderful aroma of wet dog hit me the moment I walked in. And of course he comes running over and happy to see me, bless him. So, yeah. So, everyone, I have to confess, I'm in love. I've fallen in love. In the last couple of days, absolutely fallen in love. And I've fallen in love with a book. A book that I knew nothing about until, well, I guess last week when I downloaded it from Project Gutenberg. It was, well, the book specifically wasn't recommended to me, but the author was. I don't know if you've been watching some of the essays I've been reading, but a few of them, for example, Some Historians was one, came from a book of collected essays written by Christopher Morley. Now, for some reason, I'm sure I saw in that book, it said Sir Christopher Morley, so I assumed he was English, but he's not, he's American, although he seems to be quite an Anglophile, judging by the way he looks and talks and this kind of thing. Well, writes, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe that's a strange thing to say, but... And one of my dear subscribers, I'm not sure if she'd want me to mention her or not, so I'm not going to just in case, but you know who you are, recommended that I try some of his actual works rather than the collection of essays that he edited, and actually try something he wrote. And I was looking through and I came across this book called Parnassus on Wheels. And within a chapter, I knew this was a special book. It is an absolutely charming, wonderful, feel-good read. And it's a short book. It's a short read. So I urge you to read it. I'll leave a link to it down below. You can go and download it and read it. You will not, I am pretty sure, if you love books, you will not be sorry. This to me is a breathtakingly wonderful book about books. What's it about, you might be asking? Alright, well, it's about a brother and sister who the brother suffers from some illness and they decide to move from Boston to the countryside where they purchase a farm and they spend several years living there together, working and running the farm. The sister's a spinster, she's over 40, she's overweight, she's, yeah, you get it. So one day the brother decides to turn his hand to writing a book. And of course she's worried this is going to spoil their life together. And she does a few things to try and sabotage that and whatnot. But eventually he writes this book and he becomes like a best-selling author. And then from that moment on, he kind of neglects her and neglects the farm. He goes off on all these adventures to write about the countryside and his travels and this kind of stuff. And by all accounts, he's a very good writer. And one day, while he's out working in the fields rather than actually being on a trip, this traveling salesman appears. And the traveling salesman has this kind of wagon that's a mobile bookshop. Mr. Mifflin, his name is. And the name of the bookshop is Parnassus on Wheels. And he turns up at the farm and he wants to sell his business to the brother. However, the sister, Helen, she doesn't want this to happen because she knows that her brother will disappear for months on end and she'll be left running everything, and she thinks he doesn't need any more books and whatever. And they discuss it for a while, and in the end she decides to purchase the business and go on an adventure herself. And it is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Not only the story, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the best book ever written in terms of style or whatever, but in terms of just a purely enjoyable story, a good way to while away a couple of hours, it is fantastic. And as I say, if you're a bookish person, you must read this book. The previous owner of the mobile bookshop hangs out with her for a while and tries to show her the ropes, and he's extremely knowledgeable about books, and obviously Christopher Morley is as well, and he likes to show this off in his writing. and I'm going to just read you a couple of excerpts if you indulge me. Because as I say, they travel around to different farms and things, trying to introduce country people, the country farmers and people of New England to books and literature. Over beyond Port Vigor, there's a farmer who's waiting for me to go back. I've been there 3 or 4 times, and he'll buy about $5 worth, if I know him. First time I went there, I sold him Treasure Island, and he's talking about it yet. I sold him Robinson Crusoe and Little Women for his daughter, and Huck Finn and Grubb's book about the potato. Last time I was there, he wanted some Shakespeare, but I wouldn't give it to him. I didn't think he was up to it yet. I began to see something of the little man's idealism in his work. He was a kind of travelling missionary in his way, a hefty talker too. His eyes were twinkling now, and I could see him warming up. Lord, he said, when you sell a man a book, you don't sell him just 12 ounces of paper and ink and glue. You sell him a whole new life, love and friendship and humour and ships at sea by night. There's all heaven and earth in a book. A real book, I mean. Jiminy, if I were the baker or the butcher or the broom huckster, people would run to the gate when I came by, just waiting for my stuff. And here I go loaded with everlasting salvation. Yes, ma'am, salvation for their little stunted minds, and it's hard to make 'em see it. That's what makes it worthwhile. I'm doing something that nobody else from Nazareth, Maine, to Walla Walla, Washington, has ever thought of. It's a new field, but by the bones of Whitman, it's worthwhile. That's what the country needs, more books. And then I love the way this kind of carries on later when they end up meeting that particular farmer. It's wonderful. I guess we all fell asleep over his poetry, so then he started on reading that Treasure Island story to us. Wasn't it, Mother? By hickory, we none of us fell asleep over that. He started the kids reading, so they've been at it ever since, and Dick's top boy at school now. Teacher says she never saw such a boy for reading. That's what Professor done for us. Well, tell us about yourself, Miss McGill. Is there any good books we ought to read? I used to pine for that old fella Shakespeare. My father used to talk about so much, but Professor always loaded over my head. And then later, Helen McGill, she says, and finally I sold Mr. Pratt a little copy of Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare, which I thought he could read without brain fever. It's so charming. It's peppered with little literary nuggets and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know how true some of the things are, but I imagine that Morley knows his stuff. So, for example, he talks about Henry David Thoreau being like cooking for himself and that kind of stuff, and it pops up a couple of times. And all the characters in it are just wonderful. Yeah, even the horse Pegasus that pulls the Parnassus, the dog Bok, he's wonderful. Mr. Mifflin says, we went through Midshipman Easy together and a good deal of Shakespeare. He's a very bookish dog. Isn't that, that's just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It was written in 1915, published a year or two after, and it's a very refreshing and interesting read. It's kind of a woman's battle with liberation, getting herself out there, battling against her brother who doesn't believe she should be and believes she's kind of being kidnapped by this man instead of the fact that she would want to go off herself and have her own business or have her own adventures. And it's very interesting to see, I think, how Morley writes about that, and he does it in such a way that you just think you're reading a story, whereas of course there is probably something deeper in that. But it really is just I can't go on about it enough. Very rare has a book made me just laugh aloud, well up a little bit, get a bit teary, just feel warm and cozy on these cold early autumnal nights. It was just such a pleasure spending the last 2 nights curled up with Elvis reading this wonderful book. And as I say, I don't think you can it's very general, but I don't think you can profess to be a book lover and not read this book after having read it, and how charming it is and how literary it is, but what an easy read it is. And just, I don't know. I have to get a copy of it, a physical copy of it for sure. And and I knew so early on, I was like, I'm gonna love this book, and I did, and that's just special. Anyway, I urge you to, if you have an e-reader, download Parnassus on Wheels by Christopher Morley. The link is down below, and if not, grab it from your local library or whatever. I'm pretty sure you won't be sorry. It's well worth the couple of hours investment in reading. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Do take care. Bye-bye.